Very few images in the history of art have become as recognizable as this one. A gigantic wave, tiny boats, Mount Fuji in the background. We all think we know this image, but let me tell you, there is a small detail that is often overlooked, and it completely changes the way you understand it. The Great Wave off Kanagawa, like Japanese writing itself, is meant to be read from right to left, not from left to right as we are used to. Once you read it this way, the image becomes something entirely different. Now the boats no longer seem to be fleeing from the fury of nature. Instead, they appear to be moving straight toward it. Mount Fuji suddenly takes center stage in the composition, and rather than witnessing the moment these men are being consumed by the wave, we are looking at the moment just before they are forced to face their inevitable fate. The Great Wave off Kanagawa was created by the Japanese printmaker Katsushika Hokusai around the year 1830. Hokusai was born in 1760 in the city of Edo, what we now know as Tokyo, and over time he became one of the most important artists of Ukiyo-e, a type of Japanese woodblock print that was extremely popular in his era. Throughout his life, he produced an astonishing number of works. More than 30,000 pieces are attributed to him, including paintings, drawings, and woodblock prints, making him one of the most prolific artists in history. The Great Wave off Kanagawa was created during the final stage of his career, when Hokusai was already over 70 years old. Interestingly, he himself claimed that everything he had produced before that age held little value. For Hokusai, growing older did not mean losing ability, but gaining clarity. He believed that with time, his art became more precise and more alive. He expressed this idea with ambition and a touch of irony in the introduction to his series 100 Views of Mount Fuji, written in 1834, where he stated that only with many years could each line truly possess a life of its own. The Great Wave is part of a broader series titled 36 Views of Mount Fuji. The creative process behind these works was collective. Hokusai produced the original designs, and from them, specialized craftsmen carved the images into wooden blocks. These blocks were then inked and used to print the images onto paper, usually traditional Japanese paper made from mulberry. Thanks to this method, the same image could be reproduced many times, although never in a completely identical way. The earliest editions of the series were printed almost entirely in shades of blue. This was made possible by the recent arrival of Prussian blue, an imported pigment that had a major impact in Japan. This blue allowed artists to create a wide range of light and dark tones using a single color. With it, Hokusai was able to depict water, mountains, and misty skies with a depth and atmosphere that felt entirely new at the time. Only after the series became successful did the prints begin to be produced with additional colors, and the set was expanded with 10 extra views of Mount Fuji. Throughout the series, the mountain appears from different locations and during different moments of the year. One of the most striking scenes is Ajiri in Suruga province, also known as sudden gust of wind, where people and trees struggle against a wind so strong it seems capable of sweeping everything away. In that image, Mount Fuji is reduced to a very simple silhouette, drawn with a single line. With very few elements, Hokusai shows how the wind tears leaves from the trees and throws papers and travelers' hats into the air. Everything is in motion, everything feels unstable, and yet the scene remains perfectly balanced. The Great Wave off Kanagawa was the first image in the entire series. It depicts a colossal wave rising and curling, just about to crash down on 3 boats that struggle forward through a violently agitated sea. These boats are oshiokuri-bun, long vessels used to transport live fish. Each one carries 8 rowers, evenly positioned on both sides, along with 2 additional men at the front. The rowers lean forward in unison, tense, gripping their oars tightly as they push through the water. By including these boats, the human presence enters a landscape dominated by the overwhelming power of the ocean. To heighten the sense of danger, Katsushika Hokusai transforms the crests of the waves into sharp, claw-like forms that seem to reach toward the men. The sea appears almost alive, hostile, and predatory. One of the most important aspects of the image is the dialogue between 2 immense natural forces, the sea and the mountain. In many ways, the true center of the composition is Mount Fuji. For Hokusai, this mountain was not merely a background element. In Buddhist and Taoist traditions, Fuji was associated with immortality and had been a sacred site of pilgrimage for centuries, symbolizing stability and permanence in Japan. Mount Fuji appears slightly shifted toward the lower right of the image. The horizon line is low, placing the mountain far in the distance, yet its presence remains solid and unmistakable. While the waves rise, break, and fall in a constant cycle of motion, the mountain stays completely still, indifferent to the chaos unfolding around it. Here, two different ways of understanding time are set against each other. On one side is the brutal and immediate present of the sea, a continuous movement that demands the full attention of the boatman. On the other is the slow, almost infinite time of the mountain, which exists across thousands of years and is unaffected by any single moment. Hokusai reinforces this idea by depicting both the waves and Mount Fuji using very similar colors, dominated by blue and white. The comparison becomes even clearer through the small wave in the foreground, whose shape deliberately echoes the silhouette of Fuji. The spray of the water even seems to merge with the snow at the mountain's peak, as if both elements were blending into one another. This visual game creates an unsettling sensation for the viewer. The repeated forms force us to question what we are seeing. The mountain can be read as a wave frozen in time, while the waves become temporary mountains that rise and vanish endlessly. Throughout his career, Hokusai returned again and again to the theme of the sea, constantly experimenting with new ways of depicting waves. An early example is Fast Cargo Boat Battling the Waves, created around 1805. In that image, the ocean twists violently, and a wave opens in front of the boat like the mouth of a giant whale about to swallow it. Even after creating the Great Wave off Kanagawa, Hokusai continued to explore this motif. He experimented with line, contrast, and composition, and in some works he even removed the horizon entirely. For him, the sea was never just a setting, but an infinite space for thinking, experimenting, and pushing the boundaries of form and meaning. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, there is a fundamental detail that completely changes how this image should be interpreted, and that is the correct direction of reading. But before continuing, I would like to take a few seconds to remind you that if you would like to have a reproduction of this artwork in your home, you can now purchase it directly from our website. Shipping is completely free worldwide, and I can assure you that you will be buying a reproduction that is as faithful as possible to the original print. Just like in the video you are watching, by collecting your favorite artworks, you can turn your home into your own personal museum. I will leave the link in the description so you can place your order. As I was saying, although Japanese is written from top to bottom, it is read from right to left, not from left to right as we are used to in the West. And as small as this difference may seem, it causes the first impression of the image to be completely different for a Japanese viewer than for a Western one. From a Western reading, the scene is usually understood as an escape. The boats seem to be moving toward the right, as if desperately fleeing from the wave that is about to crash down on them, interpreted as the fisherman's attempt to survive the fury of nature. However, from a Japanese reading, from right to left, the opposite is true. The boats move toward the left, directly against the wave. They are not fleeing from it, but heading straight toward it. It is important to remember that the scene takes place off the coast of Kanagawa, and it is assumed that the fishermen are returning from Edo after selling their fish. This means they have no alternative route. The only way home is along this path, forcing them to face the wave head-on. In my opinion, this reading makes the image far more terrifying, because the threat is no longer behind the men, but directly in front of them. The danger is no longer something chasing them, but something they must confront. This interpretation is supported by the drawing itself. If we look closely at the boats, especially the one at the top, we can see that the bow, narrow and sharp, clearly points to the left. This confirms that the correct direction of reading is the Japanese one, not the Western one. Hokusai reinforces this idea in other works, such as Soshu Choshi from the series 1000 Images of the Ocean, where the boat moves against the current, this time toward the right, something that can be clearly identified by the trail left in the water. In both cases, the orientation of the boat is key to understanding the scene. Read from right to left, the great wave off Kanagawa stops being an image of escape and becomes an image of confrontation. We are not seeing men trying to save themselves, but men moving toward an inevitable fate. And it is precisely in that forced decision, in that moment just before impact, that the painting reveals its true nature. All it takes is to imagine the overwhelming scale of the wave and place ourselves in the position of these small boatmen to realize that this image is truly a masterpiece of horror. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end, and if you think there is something I missed or something worth adding, feel free to share it in the comments. I would love to read your thoughts. See you in the next video.